Carrie Shaw, and I'm a soprano with Ensemble Niente, and I'm here with Noor Slim, the composer of one of the works on our concert, Humming Between Branches.
Hi, Carrie.
Hello.
I am so happy to that you play my song.
We are so excited. It's such a beautiful piece, so full of color and texture, and it's a wonderful work.
Oh, thank you. Sunshine.
So tell me a little bit about how the work came into being. How did it start? Where did you come up with the ideas?
¿Cómo empezó? ¿Cómo viniste con las ideas?
Okay, with my English. Uh, just with a poem, I have a friend, two friends, Guadalupe Galvan and Brian Allen, and they give me two poems. And with the mails, with my friends, I just collect branches and make a good tree. That's the song.
That's so beautiful. So, did you know who you were writing for, which soprano you were writing for?
¿Sí escribías para una soprano en especial?
In my class, in my composition class, I am in the university yet. So we have one of our partners, no, una compañera, ¿sí? She's a soprano, one of the students. And we are bother her, molestándola. That's why it's like playing for a kids, no? Because she's in the class and I say, what's the highest note you can sing? I'm gonna write, and in pianissimo. That's why it's a little crazy, because it was a game in the classroom. That's why. And then it sounds so good, and it was so beautiful. But it starts with a game with Victoria, that it's my partner in the class. That's why it's crazy, the part of the soprano.
It really is. I mean, but also very beautiful. And I think any soprano would want to sing this, even with the high note.
Oh, and also I love songwriting, las canciones,
Songwriting.
songwriting. So for me, even if it's contemporary music or classical music, it's important that contains like a song. So you can, because I am a guitar player at the beginning, so for me it needs to be like a melody and como cantable.
Cantabile.
Cantabile. Cantabile. Uh-huh.
So, what was your favorite part of the piece to compose?
I think like Stoplight,
Yeah.
the part with the viola,
Yeah.
is my favorite part, because viola and soprano, it's
Unusual.
unusual. But for me, I want that the viola are like the guitar.
Mm.
So I put a crazy things and the imagine that the dark and just the red stoplight.
Mm.
So I love to write that, to think about that you are in the middle of nothing and just this red top light. Maybe you can go crazy because it's hard. And when I listen, when other people play this part, they make crazy, and I like the crazy.
So, where did you come up with the idea for the bassoon?
The bassoon, it was at the beginning for a trombone.
Oh.
Because I have a good friend, Brian Allen, who is the guy who write with Guadalupe Galvan the poem. And then in the Sepro Music Ensemble that they had the world premiere of this work, and they don't have trombone, so they have bassoon, and I changed to the bassoon, and it was funny, super funny. So for me, it was so good, the bassoon. I think that I like to compose with all the instruments that I have, and if the instrument change, I want to change with the instruments.
Beautiful. I want to make sure that I asked all the correct questions. Hold on. Let's see. Um, question.
My
Sorry.
English is mixed text.
No, está muy bien. Los pequeños ajustes y entiendes todo y
See. Oh, okay. One more question. I'm very curious about the poetry and the language. Um, do the Latin sounding words that are in some of the movements, the things that sound like plant names, plants, caprifolium,
Caprifolium.
is that, are those invented or are those real
son
things?
inventadas o son reales.
Are real words because like
The
five
scientific name of some plants.
are the
Okay.
scientific words. I have my last word before coming between branches. I make an album just about flowers because I love botanica, but I don't know how to say botanica. No, that
Botanics.
botanics.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that makes
about
sense.
Plants and flowers.
Plant life.
So I studied a lot about the real name of the flowers, and the meaning, and what do they need to survive.
Mm.
So I am in love of flowers and plants. That's why I love that words that when you are singing that words are so beautiful and they have a different meaning and it's so beautiful for me.
Did you make all of the drawings for the extended techniques for the blowing and?
I have a couple of drawings. Also, I promised to send you
Pero que
because
sí hiciste tú todos los dibujos para las.
see, yes. I
Oh,
make.
yes.
I have a lot of draws because before to compose something, I do everything with my hand and draws and recollect poems or I don't know, como pedazos de cosas.
Pieces of things.
To make the song. And I want to share you because you and Ben tell me, no, if I have something before the score. Yes, I have a lot. Also because I studied first jazz
Yes.
and I changed my career to compose, but in classical. So it was so difficult for me, all of the classical music and the contemporary music. So this word, it was the first word that I como lo logré.
Achieved.
So I have a lot of these things that to have my first good word.
Do you still want to have some sounds of jazz in your music? Some ideas of jazz in your music?
I don't know. My teacher, he doesn't like. I don't know. But I understand him because he say that sometimes you are in that zone that you think that you are so good, and he say that I need to change if I want to make a real good music, and it will be a lot of years doing great music, but if I just choose the notes that I know, I never will be a better musician. That's why I prefer don't use anything that I learned before to be with my new teacher, to be a new Nur. I
Nueva
try.
Nur.
Nueva Nur, Nueva York.
Well, I think that's good. This was really wonderful, and I'm so happy. Are there any things that you want to tell me about the piece for my own self for performing?
Para ella misma, para lo que quieres.
Well, pues, thank you for playing. No, for me, it's an honor. I am super fan of your ensemble, and I listen a lot of you together, and it's so good for me. Today, Amy, the violist,
Ah,
write me. And I say, well, you do wherever you want, your version for me it's okay because I am from the jazz school. So for me, improvise, it's okay. That you change something, it's okay because each one of you are unique. So I can say that you can repeat the same version like Sepro music. No, I want like Ensemble del Niente has, you have your own version and it will be awesome for me.
well, thank you so much. Yay.
Yeah, and I am so happy. I want to hear, and also if there will be no pandemia, I want to be. I will be in Chicago.
Yes. Oh.
Yes.
Well, I'll be inside of a safety suit, I think, with like
No.
everything of your plastic around me, and yeah.
Oh, but also for me, it's a good news that you continue making music because it was a lot of music that just stopped this year. So it's amazing that continue even with pandemia and with
Yeah.
astronaut.
Are
Soon.
you done with school?
Que sí, ya acabaste la escuela.
No, I think that I'll never because they hate me. I am the worst student. I hope one day I finish that school. Yes, it's difficult. That's it.
Oh.
But I hope one day. Also, I continue composing every day, and one day I will have that.
The paper.
Título. The paper.
The paper.
Yeah.
That paper. Well,
All right. Well, thank you so much.
thank you, Carrie. And I feel so comfortable that it will be around because my English is like so mixed.
Oh.
All in present or all in past, all in future, no time.
I think that's the future of English.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Carrie, and see you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I'm Emma Hospelhorn. I'm the flutist for Niente.
Did I know?
Yeah. And can you say who you are?
My name is Tania León, composer, conductor, and educator.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, and so we are playing De Memorias, and can you just tell me that again about how it came to be or what the ideas are?
Well, the Memorias is actually a piece dedicated to my teacher, Alfredo Diaz Nieto, which now is about 102 or 103. I mean, it's spectacular. And he is in La Habana, Cuba. And but I wrote the piece here, just thinking of him. Sometimes I think of my teachers. I still remember my teacher when I was a child. You know, I mean, her name was Doro. And
Your
anyway, I mean, it's
composition teacher?
no, piano teacher. I became a composer in the United States.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you weren't a composer in Cuba?
No, I was training to be a pianist, and I really was pursuing a pianistic career, you know, as a concert pianist. But in Cuba, I wrote some songs and things like that because my brother used to have a little combo. You know, we call it a combo as a little ensemble.
Yeah.
And him and I used to sing together. And I don't know. I mean, we would write songs and sing the songs and be part of the repertoire of the combo. So one of these songs, you know, was heard by somebody that knew a very, you know, a famous singer. And she sang the song, and I freaked out completely.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Can I still hear the song? Can I like go online and hear this song?
Well, no, she passed away. And, you know, the song was called Ciego Reto, and it was a bossa nova.
Oh, so cool. And you would normally play the piano? in the?
Well, I mean, sometimes I would play the piano, but it depends on what he needed. Sometimes I was a drummer.
Wow.
Sometimes I had to play the upright bass. You know, we just, I mean, you know, we can, out of the conservatory, we all, you know, we're doing all kind of things and improvising and you know,
Yeah,
crazy making.
that's amazing. So you could
It was very, very rewarding, and a lot of music in the house, and my grandmother loved it.
wow. That's so, and then so then she sang your song and you said, "Oh, maybe I should be writing music?"
No, necessarily. No, 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 no. I mean, my writing music happened after I arrived in this country. And within the year, I met Arthur Mitchell, and he changed my life completely because he spoke with me about a project that he had in mind, and he wanted me to. I mean, it's a long story, but I mean, it was a chance encounter. The fact that we met, and he heard me play the piano, and he asked me, you know, if I would play the piano for him. And all of this, I mean, with a lot of signals because I didn't speak English. It was really funny. And, you know, I mean, the project became the Dance Theater of Harlem.
Yeah.
And then, you know, being the pianist and the musician, the first musician in the company, he asked me, why not, you know, would you write a ballet and I'm going to do the choreography? Because everything that I was playing was not with books. Everything was improvised.
Yeah. So you did the choreography that
I did that ballet, yes, called Tones, and it was something else. You know, I remember I went to the library. I took theory, you know, theory books and things like that. And that was when I was actually getting into NYU to enroll to validate my degree from Cuba as a
wow.
pianist.
As a pianist.
As a pianist, right.
So
And not only when I saw the ballet on stage with the lights, the dancers, the audience, you know, and that's when I said, I better study composition.
yeah. Wow. So when you're writing the ballet, did you have a vision in mind or an idea?
The vision was him, you know.
Okay.
He would say, follow me, and he would show me the rhythmical syntax of the movement, you
Hmm.
know, and that is how I started sort of like making sense. And, you know, I mean, this is sort of like a comic book, you know, I mean, that is reference when the movement almost mirrored the sound, you know. At times I did that, and at times I just went totally away from the movement and did something else. But that ballet is very rhythmical because, I mean, that's the only thing that I could hold down into in order to get this piece together. And
Yeah.
but it was a revelation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Amazing. And then so let's jump forward. What inspired you to write this wind quintet?
Well, I told you, you know, I mean, you know, after Dance Theater of Harlem, I sort of like came down to Manhattan because at Dance Theater of Harlem, we were in Harlem, you know. I was there, you know, literally the first 12 years of my arrival in the United States, or the 12 first years of the company, per se.
Yeah.
Right. And then, you know, I started writing chamber music and getting into the community, you know, meeting a lot of musicians, and it was a spectacular moment, you know, because I sort of like became part of Chamber Music America, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and I don't know if it was called that way, but it was with Margaret Jury. She was the one you know, in charge. But that is how I met Virgil Thompson, for example, and you know, I mean, John Cage, and all of these incredible new names in my life that I had no clue about. Because when I came here, I just knew about Leonard Bernstein and Aaron Copland. You see?
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, I mean, in Cuba, we studied the contemporaries of our time.
Of course.
The
Yeah.
composers, the Cuban composers that were living composers,
Yeah.
we learned them and we actually, integrated it into our repertoire. So that was an emphasis, perhaps to give support or lend support to the voices of the time.
Yeah.
But not so much about the American scene.
Right.
Much more the European scene, studying perhaps Stravinsky, which was very, very in at that time.
Yeah.
And different composers and like that. But I knew about Rhapsody in Blue, for example. I knew Rhapsody in Blue and American in Paris.
Yeah. And
I knew it, and Son Cubano, And the thing that I knew about Leonard Bernstein was West Side Story. To the point that, because on television they showed a clip of the film. And it's an anecdote of my life. When I arrived in New York, that my friends picked me up, and we drove to the Bronx where they lived. I saw for the first time the buildings with the fire stairs on the outside.
Yeah.
And I started screaming, Maria, Maria, because I've seen the clip of Leonard Bernstein singing Maria.
Yeah. I love that song, yeah.
My friends, they said, Maria, what? What are you talking about?
Oh my gosh. That's great.
So I knew yes, no, and Maria. those were my English words.
That's amazing, but it's also like that's so tied to, again, that's like music tied to place, right? Because you see that fire escape.
Exactly. Come on, I have just arrived in the States, and I arrived at midnight at Kennedy. Wow. So, when we entered in the Bronx and I saw these buildings, that's what it flashed to me. The Maria song and this fellow, singing there. And
you're in New York and it's like the old.
Forget it.
Yeah.
This is the first time that I went to Harlem that coincidentally, Mitchell and I went to the same place, and that's how I met him. But the first time that I took the train to Harlem, it was like, Harlem, the one in the movies, it was like, yes.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And, I loved those first 12 years of my getting into the American scene and American culture and everything, working in Harlem, the neighbors, we gave a scholarship to the kids, and to learn music and also movement. And the neighbors will invite us to have soul food, for example. And the dancer would teach me how to dance all of the dances of the time. It was just amazing every time I think about that moment. Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And then this music for De Memorias, that's the music of, you said, of life in Cuba, rather, right?
Well, it's actually in my memories of course, a sophisticated way of having a memory of Cuba and thinking of the foliage. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of birds, for example.
Is the flute a bird?
One of them.
Okay, one of them, yeah.
It could be a bird, it could be a breeze. Yeah. It could be ruffling, the leaves, you see. Because it's very green, and flowers, and it's hard to describe. It's what the people think about the islands, because it's you're surrounded by the sea, the humidity. The plants, all of them thrive. Yeah. So that is something that I adore. I adore plants, and I was thinking about my teacher. As I told you, I have very fond memories of my teachers, and now is that I understand the emphasis that they've made at giving me the knowledge that they had. Mm-hmm. And I remember my solfege teacher, Tete, was her name.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, when you grow older, you start actually reviewing the different episodes and the different cycles of your life. So that was one moment that I wrote that piece.
That's beautiful. And I've never, I don't think, played a piece that was composed quite this way with with these repetitive figures, like this sort of strange, like ostinato or montuno or something, right? And then we get to sort of overlap, and the notation seems very free and yet pretty specific at the same time. So I had a different experience of time playing it than
Oh,
I
yes.
normally do. Yeah.
Yeah. Because the thing is that you have to be free but alert.
Yes.
You have to be very alert because, your freedom has, it looks prolonged when you're in it. It's like walking in a garden, right? And all of a sudden you see something and you go like, boom, and in that boom, you merge with other instruments. So you have to be very, very, very careful. I know
that. Yeah, and it's seductive, right? You can kind of get a little bit lost and I'm doing my beautiful flute cadenza and wait, I was supposed to line this note up. Right? And you're very specific the way you say where to line up.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, you have these other instruments who are just engaged in their own extremely specific rhythm.
Yes.
That has no set end, right? Because we have the freedom to expand and to contract.
Exactly. However, there are moments where, for example, a duet starts sort of like walking together. You see? And in the midst of all of that forest, you see? And these two musicians, or instrumentalists, they have to concentrate.
Yeah.
So, not to get swayed with what is going on. And that is the beauty, at least for me, that had to do with my own walking, going to the conservatory. And that's sort of like what I said about the routine. I used to go to the conservatories Tuesdays and Fridays, you see?
Yeah.
So that were my days, very intense, a lot of hours there, but only Tuesdays and Fridays, because sometimes on Tuesdays, they will tell you, okay, you have to memorize this fugue by Friday, So, it was something else. But by Friday, you go and you play your fugue. And it's interesting, among the musicians or the composers that I adore, completely adore, is Johann Sebastian Bach, you see? Well, let me tell you something. At that time, I couldn't take it. You told me Bach, and I would run away because it was too complicated.
Well, especially the pianist, right? Like you have to play the symphonias, you have to play.
Not only that, all those fugues, and then the teacher tell you, well, wait a minute, this is the first voice, but the second voice, you're not actually bringing out the second voice. It was like, oh my God, who is this guy? Who wrote this? I didn't like him at all.
Wow, that's amazing. I remember those fugues. I think that's why I quit piano.
Really? Oh my.
Yeah, because you're right. It's so hard to bring the voices, but now I'm thinking about, ooh. But then in your music you have these voices, but they're coming. I'm thinking about this in a different way now.
Yes. No, absolutely. I feel that all of us get influenced when we least expect it.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. I adore Bach.
Yeah.
And now, I have some of my books from Havana, and I go to the piano and I play the pieces. And now I understand. I said, Jesus, this guy was a genius,
There's always a melody.
Unbelievable. And the amount of music he wrote.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Every day a new piece, right? Maybe Tuesday to Friday.
Yeah, I mean, you know, a baptism, a wedding, and a church. I mean, it's like, wow,
Yeah.
unbelievable.
It's
Yeah.
amazing. Oh, wow. That's so great. And then did you ever, so you played piano, you played drums, you play upright bass. Did you ever play a wind instrument?
Oh, yes. I studied at NYU,
Yeah?
two instruments, you know, which I adore writing for those instruments now. And those were the bassoon and the trombone.
Oh, so cool.
In fact, I have to look for, I must have a picture of me playing the trombone. I mean, I wish I find it, but
I would love to see that picture.
me too.
So the low wind instruments, that's amazing. And yeah, I just think those instruments have such amazing timbre, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And I love the flute, I must say. Yeah. Because I mean, even in Cuba, the flute is very important in the music of the culture of Cuba.
Yeah,
You
it's all over the popular music, right? Like everywhere.
absolutely. You know, exactly. And I learned a lot, you know, listening to that music, you know, and I dance salsa, for example. But you have to see, I mean, you have to be very mindful of the polyrhythmia that is going on.
Hmm.
So you know exactly how to sway and you don't start going against the music, you know.
Yeah.
But in the middle of all of that, the flute comes in and makes a solo. Yes. And they sometimes use the violins. I mean, it's like a very interesting ensemble or
Yeah.
instrumentation, you know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
'Cause the flute's always like skating over everybody else, right?
It's very high,
Yeah.
very high. It's like if there is a trumpet involved, very high.
The big range. Um,
Yeah.
oh, this is so amazing. I have just one more like composition question for you, I think, which
Uh-huh.
is do you have like one sort of process or way you work when you're sort of sitting down to write a piece, or is it different every time or
Well, first of all, for me to write a piece, I have to first fix my drawers.
your drawers?
Yes, I had to have things in order. Yes, and if I don't have to fix some books, I have to fix something. But it's like my mind has a process. Of course, if I am home, you know. But I can write in a park, and I can write in a plane. I can write anywhere. You see, but I have to have things in order, and I don't know why. It's sort of like it opens something. I'm talking about when I am at home,
Yeah, and you have your
go to my you know, computer or to the piano or to, you know, but I write first and then I check, you see.
Mhm.
And I write a piece and I don't redo the piece. I don't review the piece. No. When I said this piece is done, that's the piece. I don't go back
Wow.
because I want to capture the moment. And for me, you know, for me, I could definitely realize that moment 2 3 weeks from now is not me because I have already grown to become somebody else.
Yeah.
I mean, each piece for me is like a snapshot of who I was at that moment. You see,
Yeah.
there's only one piece that I am actually not reviewing but redoing in a way. And it's a song cycle that I am actually doing right now in collaboration with a poet called Carlos Pintado. And it's interesting because the bookends of the piece are in English and the other songs in the middle are in Spanish.
Wow.
So
So is that the same? Did you do it that way before?
no, it's the first time I do this.
The first time. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. I can't
Yeah.
wait. I can't wait to hear it. Well, Tania León, this was amazing. Thank you so much for talking to me.
Oh my God, we could be talking
I
for
could,
years.
yeah, absolutely. And I feel
Well, you're interviewing me, but now I would love to interview you.
sure. Well, yeah, this is, I mean, I would love to do this again and talk to you more. And I just like after talking to you, I'm even more excited about this piece.
Ah,
I already was really enjoying it, but I have so many questions. But yeah, I thank you for giving me your time.
thank
And
you.
yeah, and would it be okay if we come up with other questions in our next rehearsal? This was a loose
Yes, oh,
one.
absolutely, absolutely. And if you want to actually have a session, I mean, for me to coach or to give you some ideas, feel free.
Oh, that would be amazing. I will take that to the rest of the quintet because I think it would be useful. Because we I looked up some of the performances and I think we were kind of taking clues from them because you worked with the Ensemble Connect, right?
Oh my God, we worked a lot.
I bet.
I mean, I was there at Carnegie Hall with them, and then, I mean, yeah,
Okay. I was like, if they do it that way, that means she told them to do it that way, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
they are urtext right now.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what I figured.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's helpful. Just
Are you guys gonna play it standing up or?
I don't think we talked about it when we rehearsed. Well, this time is so crazy.
I know, I know, I know.
So we were in our conductor's backyard where and I built this screen out of like PVC and a shower curtain so that, I'm not
Of
spitting on
course, of
everything.
course, of course. Yeah.
And so I think, how are we doing it? I think we were yeah, we were standing when we rehearsed the first time, but we haven't talked about it. Would you have preference?
Oh, I love, I mean, the standing type of situation because you know what? You have to move.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to
Exactly, exactly.
side piece.
Exactly, exactly. Of course, I mean, now the one that they put out, they were choreographed, of course.
Oh,
You haven't seen the one, the version that is out?
wait, I just saw a YouTube video of in Carnegie Hall or something.
There's with an audience.
Yeah.
Well, that is choreographed.
I have to look again. I think I was looking at the score and I wasn't watching.
Watch them.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
They loved it so much that they said, we want a choreography.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. Okay, so it's really the visual is, and it's interesting, as we're trying to figure out how to do concerts without concerts, the
Well,
visual is so
let me
important.
tell you, Emma, I think that, the whole myth about classical music devoid classical music from its own spirit.
Yes.
I have been working or have worked in fact, I cannot go right now. Ensemble Modern is going to play one of my pieces next month in two
Yeah.
cities in Germany. When I went there and I saw these people playing Brahms for the first time, I went, wow, this sounds like a different Brahms.
Hmm.
They were I mean, the entire orchestra was like, what?
They were just moving and really playing it or
Hey.
yeah. Yeah, it's
So the music was like, doing all kind of things.
because we can get in a box sometimes, right? With the
Well, but the tendency have been that the teachers that we had, with all due respect, that was what was happening.
yeah.
They would tell the pianist, don't move.
Right.
The
It's like,
don't move. The flutist, don't move. The singer, singing head, don't move the rest of the,
Right. It's totally divorced from like, dance and movement and just life.
Divorced from the passion that you may feel, And I said that, okay, the singers can sing that way. And then I see Victoria de Los Angeles, and Callas, they were crazy.
Yeah.
And I don't mean doing the opera, when they were doing their recitals.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Like,
the body is to express.
yeah. And we understand more if we see somebody play and they move the way they show us, right? Like their concept of the
You can see the emotion, the passion that all of a sudden is in front of you, and all of a sudden the music becomes something else.
Yeah.
It's not only from here up.
Yeah.
What about the heart?
It's not just operating a machine, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. It's something different. And
that is what has made millions of people run away from it. I say, oh no,
right. Like, oh, it's too fussy. I like the real music, but
Exactly. So one of the things that really, really impressed me here is when I started listening to the jazz orchestras or the jazz groups and everything, they are able to do everybody together. Without a conductor, they're
yeah.
because they are in sync and they move and they know.
And they're all the conductor. Their whole body is the conductor.
Exactly. And here, most of the time, in string quartet, somebody has to tell, well, we're going to look at each other. Well, no, I want to look at you at this moment, and then I'm going to give you the upbeat.
I know this conversation. Yeah.
Understand?
Yep.
In other words, the music gets very uptight.
Yeah.
Everybody looks uptight.
Yeah, they look worried.
A lot of worry going on.
Really worried, like, oh God, are we gonna? But I think we're trying. I think we're.
So now everybody's liberating themselves. This is what I feel. First of all, the composers are writing whatever they want to write. They're not writing anymore serialism and 12 tones and this and that. Everybody's writing whichever influence they want to.
Yeah.
It's
great freedom.
Exactly.
Which is
and that's something that I have been really pursuing, freedom in my music.
Yeah.
One way or the other. So that's what you have in front of you.
That's so exciting. So I feel it. I see it, in the notation and everything. Tania, I want to get a coffee with you sometime. If
No. We all are gonna go crazy when this whole thing stops.
Oh yeah.
Well, listen, I'm very honored, that you guys are going to be playing my music. You're a terrific ensemble.
Thank you.
And so I feel
I'm so excited to play it. I
will.
Many. Yeah. Thanks again so much for taking the time to talk to me.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. All right. Thank you, Tania.
Take care. We have fun.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hello, everybody. Tomas and I have been chatting for a while here, but we're going to pretend like we haven't and like we're doing a formal interview. My name is Jesse Langen. I'm the guitar player for Ensemble Niente.
And my name is Tomás Gueglio, and I'm the composer of one of the works that is part of this program.
So, Tomas, tell us about your piece.
The piece, it's called La Marque Songs. It's part of a trilogy that I wrote based on this 1940s Argentine melodrama called Cita en la Frontera, the star of which is Libertad Lamarque, who is like a huge star of the 40s of the Spanish-speaking world, so to speak. She eventually moved to Mexico, and from there became like a really huge star. And it's for soprano and guitar, flute, viola, and percussion. The piece, it's an expansion of a previous piece, a duo I wrote for soprano and guitar that you, Jesse, have recorded. So it's an expansion on that, not only in the instrumental forces, but also it's longer now, and it has more sections, let's say. That's the bare bones of the piece.
So I sent Tomás some questions to prep for this, but right now I'm going to ask him a question I didn't prep him for. I wonder if you have. I
can't say I didn't know this was coming.
I didn't know this was coming, so
I know
so you are better prepared for my moment than I am. But when I was trying to write out questions, I had this question in my mind that I couldn't really formulate. So I wonder if you can help me make my question here. That when I think about your piece, I'm thinking about lots of different styles of music. And I'm thinking about these styles intersecting and sort of realizing that the styles are not necessarily very distant from each other. Mm-hmm. And so there is something like Webern happening in this music. And maybe there's something superficially Webern-like about the music in some places, in some ways. There is an early 20th century pop music thing, obviously. And then when I think about the intersection between those things and form, then I think about, like, let's say Rebecca Saunders. Mm-hmm. So I wonder if you can make a better if you can answer a better question than the one that I'm asking about style in your piece.
That's an interesting question. Yeah, style is definitely an intersection of those basically two variables that you were saying. You know, earlier 20th century, let's say modernist music, Webern, mm-hmm. and something more pop. You know, like 40s melodramas.
Yeah, and I bet both for, let's say, a composer like Webern and for his audience, you know, especially maybe his educated audience, those things seemed more connected than they might to a modern listener.
Yeah, I mean, the connection between early modernism and, like, say, cabaret style has
exactly.
kind of like has been, you know, diluted by history, but it was definitely there. I mean, these people were having fun in places, and those places played a certain music, and that music made it into the rep. Right. It's just been cleaned of that. But now people are going back to incorporating that, you know, into the study of that music.
Right.
I do that consciously, you know, the mixing of these two, you know, sources, let's say. And to the beginning of your question, I would say my default mode of orchestration tends to be pointillism, but not only of orchestration. I mean, it goes beyond that, and I like the different points that partake in that texture to have an expressive, emotional, and referential weight to them, you know, that they point to something.
Something that strikes me about the way that styles live in your piece, and maybe this is the thing that also reminds me of let's say Rebecca Saunders, is you're not making a continuum of those things. So you're not like drawing every location between, mm-hmm. let's say, Webern and Lotte Lenya or something like that. The electronics contain the samples from the movie, right? Mm-hmm. And it's almost like that's where that aspect of style lives.
Okay. I mean, I'm not sure if I'm going to use the electronics for this version, though. I mean, we can edit that out.
Okay.
Okay. But let's keep going.
Igor, edit that out. Well, actually, we should talk, because then this affects my. Are there maybe not going to be electronics?
It's still TBD. It depends on copyright issues. Since Library of Congress is like a government agency, I need some clearance.
Okay. So,
but I mean, it's relevant anyway, I think because the singer sings like portions of that of the movie and songs from the movie, so and that is replicated in the instruments too. So there is a melodramatic aspect to the writing too.
Yeah.
So I think
Well,
the question is still relevant.
okay, yeah, that there is some way, let's say in the voice and guitar version,
Mm-hmm.
there is some way that there's a box around the part that's actually period pop music style,
Uh-huh.
because it's in the electronics. And so part of what makes it rich and bittersweet, and like tantalizing but inaccessible, is this box, that one of the styles is contained inside a box.
It's like a little window, yeah.
Yeah, and you're not actually trying to break us into that box. You're leaving it. It's a carrot on the end of a stick.
Yeah, I don't want to get like over sentimental about this, but the piece is it's very nostalgic. I mean, for me, the reason I was drawn to this movie is because my grandmother was an extra in the movie. She's there somewhere. I can't really see her face because it's the 40s movie and it's very blurred. So it in that sense, it's a very Proustian piece in that, you know, there's like this sense of nostalgia for basically my childhood also. And Libertad Lamarque sings in the movie, and when she sings in a style that both my grandmothers used to imitate when they were singing. So there's a very, you know, powerful moment there.
Yeah.
For me, the minute I saw the movie, it was like, whoa, kind of like, you know, nostalgia overload. And that kind of like propelled me to write the trilogy.
I wonder if those things always feel sort of in a box like that. Like my memory of listening to, you know, recordings that have sort of seeped into my DNA from when I was little. I listen to the same recording today, and it's not that experience. Like I can remember what it felt like listening to those things, and it's not something that can happen today to me. So I wonder if when we have those experiences of nostalgia, I wonder if they're always kind of in a box, the way the electronics live in the soprano and guitar version of your piece.
That's a very deep point. I don't have an answer for it. I mean, it feels kind of like overpowering, at least for maybe, you know, a few minutes, and then you go back. But it feels like it's not in a box. It feels like it's kind of like unleashed. Maybe it lives in a box, but at the time that you're under its effect, it kind of like takes over you.
Is that the way you feel when you have the experience of nostalgia, or is that the way you feel when you hear the recording, or both?
I mean, the recording triggers the nostalgia.
Okay, yeah.
And it's something that I was not expecting at all, because I was researching, you know, for the one of the pieces of the triptych, but I was researching something else. I was researching like radio soap operas.
Yeah.
I wasn't researching specifically melodramas, so I kind of like stumbled upon this. I remember this movie was part of the family, you know, myth. It was a family myth. Like my grandmother was in a movie.
Yeah.
And she changed her name because she wanted to be an actress. So that, you know, taps upon like family history. And I found the movie on YouTube, and I was like, whoa, I wasn't expecting it. So and it was like a very aha moment, like, okay, this is it. Let's work from here.
So do you right now have an experience of nostalgia from the moment you saw that video in YouTube?
It's like Russian dolls of nostalgia. I mean, most of the nostalgia is for when I was like 4 or 5 or something.
Of course, yeah.
But yeah. I mean, those moments happen every now and then. You know, you run into something that triggers something that was like buried in your DNA, as you were saying before.
Yeah, this question, you know, is the nostalgia a thread? Mm-hmm. That every time you hear this, you know, you hear one of these recordings, it's going to trigger the nostalgia, or is the nostalgia these pillars or points or pins of experience brings me to my next question.
Master segwayer. Jesse Langen.
We'll see.
Okay.
Audience, you can be the judge if this is a good segue. But I playing the guitar part. Mm-hmm. I feel, so you have, let's say in the first 10 measures of the guitar part, I think, I'm not looking at the score in front of me, but
I don't have it here.
First 10 measures, like maybe start from measure 5, like measures 5 through 15 or something like that. I have glissandi, harmonics. I don't think I have chords, but I have pitchless clicks. I have sustained pitches that are like arpeggios, adjacent scale step motion, pizzicato. So I have all of these things, and any one of those gesture environments will only last for maybe 2 notes or 3 notes, and it goes on to a different kind of gesture. And then later in the piece, some of those things become quite a bit longer. So I'll have a whole section that's all chords, or I'll have a section that's all harmonics. And to some extent, it goes back and forth. And my impression of how that interacts with the score, how that interacts with the whole piece, is that there are times that we perceive the piece, you know, sort of like a choir, that we perceive the piece as individual and distinct voices, and that has to do with whether or not a particular voice is singing a particular way. And then when it's in this tighter sort of 2 or 3 notes of one thing and then switch environment, then it becomes more like a matrix where the thing that we're following, the song that we're following, is abstract, and that we can't actually pin the song on any of the voices, that we're pulling something, we're pulling some sort of principle. We're hearing a melody that the whole creates. How do you feel about that characterization of your?
Yeah, I think it's fair. I mean, you're a seasoned new music player, so you have like really good ears for this stuff, and that's the trajectory of the piece. Really, it starts. The soprano is always, you know, a through line that connects everything. I mean, Carrie is singing there almost for the entire time,
right?
And then
and her texture. Would you agree with this? Her texture maybe changes the least. That she's singing a similar kind of texture much of the time.
I mean, yeah, it's this pointillism, it's this sort of like very rapid switching between different types of characters, you know, from something more abstract to something like more romantic or melodramatic or even tango sounding.
Right.
So it's this
right in that sense that there are many different kinds of vocabulary, but the switches are usually tight, you know, or fast.
The timing, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. The timing in Carrie's part doesn't change much, but the instruments do change their roles between the beginning of the piece, where it's this sort of like matrix thing you're talking about, accompanying the pointillism in a very pointillistic way, to eventually from those small motifs and materials, larger things are kind of like span out, and in the end, it's much more sustained. That's a formal trajectory that I kind of like very much, and it seems to be a default one for a lot of my pieces. In terms of the rhetoric, it's kind of traditional. You know, you start with all these smaller situations that eventually kind of like coalesce into a larger landscape.
Yeah, that. So you said this when we were chatting before we actually got going a minute ago, and I had to think about that. So let's say when I imagine Haydn string quartet, I think of it like if we were talking about it in this kind of language, that you have something like this, you know, you have something that's maybe closer to this choir thing, and then you have the matrix. I mean, if we're going to put that kind of thinking on sonata form, the matrix is happening during the development section, and then recapitulation again is a choir that has somehow learned something from the middle.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to think, if I experience a development section that way, if I experience a development section as an abstracted melody or a melody of principle that I'm hearing above all of the other things. That when I think of a development section, I feel like I'm way down in the weeds.
Yeah.
That it doesn't feel like, you know, I guess I think of Webern orchestrating Bach, or like Webern's orchestration of his the Opus 27 piano piece. That's like you have to sit on top of it. You're not getting down into the weeds of what each individual lick is. You're listening to an abstract melody, abstracted, or a melody of principle or something like that. So I'm, next time I listen, when I go home now, I'm going to listen to a Haydn string quartet and see if I can hear the development section as some kind of, if I can abstract a melody from the top of it that floats above the obsessions.
Yep, but I feel like this sort of like layout that you're describing, you know, theme and development, later in the 20th century was reversed. So that things, I'm thinking of you're a guitar player, so Britten's Nocturnal.
Absolutely.
They put the theme at the end of the variations, you know, and that's, I mean, my piece is not a theme and variation piece, but it can have that feel to it, where you start with the variations and then you coalesce into something much more conclusive. I mean, more, thematic. If you will.
Why did it ever make sense to have an exposition before you have developed? Like that could be the 20th century argument, you know.
Yeah, I mean,
why shouldn't you develop something first?
And
then make your statement.
It's part of the strategy of, you know, smoke and mirrors and hiding and all that is very 20th century.
Yeah. But in either case, the question would remain, you know, when we listen to a development section, is one way to listen to a development section to sort of listen slower?
A development section listens slower.
To hear a melody popping out from on top of each of the motives that's breaking apart.
Oh, I see.
You know. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, because in tonal idioms, you also have what's going to throw everything out of whack. This narrative that you're putting forth is harmonic rhythm, because harmonic rhythm is usually pushing against that. I mean, in a development, it tends to be slower. So it stays there for a second as things are developed. Whereas if you have like your you know, archetypical theme for variations, the harmonic rhythm changes chord to chord. So that's the type of, you know, paradox that is so rich in tonal idioms and in the classical and romantic style. It's how harmonic rhythm and thematic rhythm are at odds with each other.
Right.
I think
fruitful for comparison anyway between let's say the first half of the 20th century and end of the 18th century, beginning of the 19th century.
Yeah.
What makes those similar or different in terms of breaking things up and how the ways that we can process that broken up texture?
Can you ask that again? I don't think I fully grasped the question.
Oh, for example,
is that a question? Yes.
Yeah, but
or
not
it
one.
Was a closing comment.
It was a closing comment. It's a question I wouldn't be prepared to answer today myself.
We have to go do some research. Okay.
Right. Yeah. So we'll leave that to you, gentle viewers. Tell me about the whistling. So I whistle a whole bunch in my part.
Yeah, I mean, the whistling, there's a lot of whistling in your part. There's whistling, Emma, the flute whistles too, percussion whistles too, and Carrie whistles too. And that comes from, in the movie there's whistling. Like, I think there's a melody that goes, and it's whistled. Whistling is a very tango thing to do too. And also there's this sort of like a theatrical element to it, that when you have a tango singer that is being accompanied by guitarists, and maybe this goes back to the duo version, there's this sort of like theatrical cabaret element, since we were talking about early 20th century cabaret style, that, you know, the guitarists sometimes comment on what the singer is doing and whistle too. So it comes from that. It's almost a stylistic trait.
So is there lots of whistling in like old like Guardia Vieja recordings of tango?
I'm not a specialist on Guardia Vieja, but whistling is it to me it brings me back to some kind of like it's a trope of tango, you know, the
Okay.
whistling. It's maybe
Yeah.
maybe not the actual whistling in recordings, but it's a trope of tango. You
It's
know,
okay. Right.
you know,
Cool.
as
Yeah.
as meaning good life and
Yeah.
peace of mind. You're just like whistling through kind of like type of things, you know, and it's
Yeah.
something that it's a signifier of happiness and well-being.
So connected to our discussion of style, it's like whether the style is contained in a box or whether the style is going on the whole time, there's also a ghost of style coming out of the whistling from the ensemble.
Yeah, and I think it's funny too. So I think it's a good thing to do. If the performers can do it, it's something fun. I mean, I don't go into
Yeah.
like virtuoso whistling. I mean, it's usually kind of like sustained notes or glisses.
Right. Yeah.
But there's
Yeah.
also in the piece itself, and this is maybe a Schubertian situation. There's a lot of reference to the wind, viento in Spanish. So there's all this musical material that relates to the wind, and whistling is one of those things. There's thunder tube also that takes place. There's whistling inside the thunder tube. So there's this development on the idea of wind, which is very cartoonish. It's kind of like sound effecty.
Yeah.
Which is what radio soap operas of the time used to do. You know, you would have a crowd, a crew of people, background, maybe a little bit farther away from the mic, doing all this sound and maybe playing some background music. And the ensemble works a little bit like that in this piece. That's noisemakers, mood makers in a way, creating the environment for what the actors were doing on the mic.
Yeah. Exactly the kind of thing that I like.
That's why I wrote the first piece for you, my friend.
So you play guitar.
I do.
And often when we're rehearsing, I will hand you my guitar and you'll show me on my guitar the thing that you want to happen in a particular spot. So you can play everything in all of your guitar parts. So I have a little complex of questions here that might be of particular interest to composition students. So do you write on the guitar?
Yes. The guitar part I write on the guitar because as part of this sort of like game or strategy, in order for me to have like a productive relationship with the instrument, I need to detune it. There's a scordatura that I usually use so that I can't just, let my hand dictate what I want to write, So I have to, there's this sort of like obstacle that to me it's very productive when writing for guitar. So when I'm writing for guitar, I need to actually play the thing because I can't really, because I have no command over the scordatura yet, or I have less command over the scordatura yet.
I see. Okay. Do you play other instruments when you are writing for them? Do you write on other instruments?
I do not. No, I usually imagine if it's something that it's a little bit out of the ordinary. I imagine the sound. Like I use my voice quite a bit when I'm composing, and then hopefully reach out to one of the instrumentalists and being like, how do you do like this sound on a flute? How do you do that on a viola? How do you do it on a percussion? So I kind of have the sound in mind, and then we start a sort of like a negotiation with the performer to see what's the best way to do that.
So then, do you feel like when you write for the guitar, do you then feel like the guitar has a say over the music that you write in a different way? Because if normally you're singing the music to yourself, so the music is coming out of you, and then maybe you're adjusting that to fit to a clarinet or viola or whatever. When you're playing guitar, to an extent, you're asking, to some extent, you must be trapped into asking the guitar, what note can happen here at this moment. Right, that inevitably is going to happen from composing on the instrument. So then do you feel like that affects the music in some larger way?
I can be way more specific with the guitar part, really. So that, let's say, so I can try things more immediately. I'm not sure how that impacts the, you were saying the overall
Yeah,
form?
maybe I could ask, I'll ask the question in absurdly metaphoric terms. So
Please.
usually you're singing to an instrument and you're telling the instrument to sing what you sang to it.
Yeah.
I think when you compose on an instrument, there's an aspect of the instrument singing to you and telling you what to write, you know.
Yeah, that's a really nice way of putting it. But it has to be an instrument that I'm not entirely familiar with, you know, because I'm still discovering possibilities for this tuning.
Right, because
Things that I haven't.
you are actually very, very familiar with guitar and standard tuning. I've heard you pick up the guitar and
Yeah,
play bits of jazz standards and stuff like that.
yeah, free improv, all the stuff that I've been doing, you know, through my performer years. So that's very much
Yeah,
ingrained.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and with this new tuning, there's all these different things that you have to basically create a tradition for that tuning. It feels a little bit like that, you know. So
Yeah.
I'm already kind of getting on a certain vocabulary for that specific tuning.
Yeah.
So when I get too familiar, maybe I'll change it or something. But
Yeah.
I'm still in that process. And the first time I used that tuning was in One Baroque, the piece you were mentioning before. And then it made it into the guitar quartet, guitar duo with soprano, and now this piece. So it's pretty standard by now.
I do something very similar when I improvise. I often just detune the guitar some way.
Yeah.
That I think, okay, this is an interesting relationship between strings, and then I'm during the whole improvisation, to an extent, I'm asking the guitar, you know, and the guitar is telling me things to do because it's not, I can no longer just play Steve Morse licks or Eric Johnson licks or whatever.
That's such an interesting guy to bring into the mix.
Yeah, not that I can play Steve Morse or Eric Johnson licks particularly well, but you know what I'm saying, that there are things that are just sort of in my hands that are a problem, but they're not a problem if I've untuned the guitar.
Yeah, and I had a similar experience doing a thing. I was working with this dance company, and we were improvising, and I was, you know, playing, you know, what I usually do in free improv, but it wasn't flying, and then I had to basically put the guitar, you know, on my lap and play like a slide guitar, so that I would get something, you know, I would get more in the mood of the dancers, you know, because I was kind of like dancing too, you know. Otherwise, I was playing, you know, the usual chords, you know, Villa Lobos type situations, up and down, and whatnot.
Yeah.
So there has to be that, you know, that sort of like gesture to provide yourself with an obstacle to allow for a certain type of creativity to arise.
So can I ask one more sort of technical question along those lines?
Yeah.
So
this interview is going to last like 5 hours. Okay. Good luck.
So also
thank you, Igor, for you know, combing through all this. Yeah.
Right, and I'll let you maybe think of a closing thought for us, because this is not going to be a closing thought. This is way in the weeds. So let's say, in part to resist that, to make sure that you are one of the singers in this relationship with the guitar, you must be, when you pick up the guitar, you must already have an idea, or is this the way that you work, that you already have a clear idea of what the piece is going to be. Maybe you have a clear idea of pitch content. Maybe you have a clear idea of, I don't know, rhythmic gestures or timbres or something before you pick up the guitar, so that the guitar isn't just completely deciding what you're going to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's one step prior to picking up the guitar, which it's usually very abstract. And for me, it involves the combinatorial strategies of pitch and rhythm, you know, so you end up with a kind of like very abstract type melody, and then I take it from there, so that, you know, there is some kind of rhythmic and pitch structure that then I adjust to, in this case, guitar soprano, and eventually, guitar soprano, flute, viola, and percussion. But I have something before that I've done without an instrument in my hand.
Yeah. You know how to show up to that negotiating table with the guitar, so it doesn't.
Exactly. It's like, I have something that
Yeah.
I have leverage. I have never thought of this in these terms, but it's very interesting. And yeah.
So those are all of my questions. Thank you, everyone, so much for
everyone.
listening to us.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, Jesse. See you.
See you, Tomás.
It was the